The dim hum of the ship's life support whispered through the cramped cockpit, a fragile reminder that they clung to life for now. Captain Alara Voss gripped her chair's armrests, knuckles whitening against the worn synth leather. At 34 she was the crew's anchor, her caution woven into every choice, like double-checking NAV logs before each jump. Beside her, Jax Harlan slouched in the co-pilot's seat, fingers flying over the console with the casual flair of a man who turned crises into games. "See that? Starboard thrusters are flirting with failure again," he said, voice light but eyes keen. "One more glitch and we're waltzing with the void." Across the narrow aisle, Mira Chen cradled a steaming mug of recycled coffee in the jump seat, her jaw set in quiet defiance. The engineer who mended hull breaches with duct tape and shear wool, she'd already survived 2 missions that should have ended her, at just 28. The 4th crew member, Dr. Theo Reyes, stayed buried in the med bay, his cautious mind poring over data pads to track their fading oxygen. The Endeavour was a battered survey relic, built for asteroid charts, not this frantic dash through uncharted black. But when Epsilon Prime's colony begged for evac supplies, they'd answered, human resolve against the infinite dark. Alara leaned in, eyes on the holographic display. A faint tremor rippled the deck, stars streaking beyond the viewport as engines groaned. "Status on the core?" she asked Mira, tone level as if chatting about rain. Mira set her mug down with a clink. "Holding, but fuel cells are at 30%. That solar flare we grazed corroded the relays worse than we figured." She swiped at a grease smudge on her sleeve, wearing it like a medal from endless repairs. Jax snorted, keying a sequence. 30%? That's generous. Reroute from the galley, who needs hot food with ration bars? The ship bucked hard, a metallic wail echoing from the vents. Alarms shrieked, red lights throbbing across panels. Alara's pulse surged, but her voice held firm. "Report. Containment breach in the cryo chamber," Mira said, unstrapping fast. "Auxiliary seals failing. If we don't vent, coolant floods the deck. That chamber guarded the colony's seed banks and meds in stasis. Lose it and Epsilon's people starved or worse." Jax swiveled, grin vanishing. "Venting dumps half our payload, Captain." Alara's thoughts raced, 3 days to drop, no backup. "Mira, suit up with me." Jax, hold her steady. "Theo, up here, monitor life support." She rose, command's burden settling like a familiar weight. As they stirred, the ship quaked again, stars twisting tauntingly in the void. Regret stirred in Alara, not for answering the call but for what they might abandon. Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle lurched, engines straining against Epsilon 9's thickening atmosphere. Below, jagged peaks clawed the sky, shadows devouring the survey team's faint beacons. Marcus, buckled beside her, coaxed his diagnostic pad, fingers nimble as if wooing a skittish partner. "Power at 40%, he grumbled, eyes on the screen. "That storm's eating batteries like candy. Push on and we might not limp back to outpost." Lila glanced back from the co-pilot's seat, worry clouding her sharp gaze. She tweaked NAV controls with precise taps, as if willing order from the storm. "No choice. Chamber's signal spiked, it's pulling us. Turn back now and the team's loss means nothing." The shuttle plunged, turbulence hammering the hull. Elena's gut twisted, the same drive that had volunteered her for this fringe op. 3 months back, the advance party vanished into those peaks, hunting alien vault rumors. Comms dead, drones lost to static, it was their ghost chase now. She peered through the viewport. Lightning cracked the ridgeline, exposing a dark gash in the stone, the chamber's mouth, jeering at their lag. "All right," Elena cut in over the drone. "Marcus, shunt AUX power to shields. Lila, plot a leeward descent. We land hot if needed." Marcus huffed, hands accelerating. "Hot? In this wind?" "Braver than sane, Cap." He overrode systems, console chirping assent. A spark leaped, he swore, fist resetting it. Human tech, always a glitch from doom, yet it delivered. The shuttle banked sharp, engines bellowing against the gale. Lila's knuckles blanched on the yoke. Squall incoming, holding. Hail rattled the canopy like shots, but her focus anchored them through the fury. Elena tracked the altimeter's plunge, the chamber swelling in view. The team's last words haunted, its opening, regret if we, then static. Whatever lurked had taken them, now it craved answers, or more lives. She cinched her harness. No retreat. Stakes transcended survival, truths in that stone, poised to redefine humanity's stellar role. Touchdown jolted them forward, gears shrieking on frozen gravel. Wind howled in the sudden hush. Elena unbuckled first, snagging her pack. Gear up. Storm's not finished, move fast. Marcus slung his toolkit, wry grin easing tension. After you, fearless leader. Don't claim I skipped the power warning. Lila paused, scanning readouts. Signal stronger. But pulsing, like a heartbeat. Her wariness lingered, echoing potential costs. One misstep, and they'd swell the ranks of the gone, regrets lost to emptiness. They emerged into biting cold, the chamber's maw gaping dark and uncaring. Elena led, flashlight carving gloom. Wind clawed suits, but boots crunched over icy stone. Inside, air stilled, oddly warm as if the mountain exhaled. 50 meters in, the passage broadened. Marcus's beam swept walls etched with alien glyphs, faintly aglow. Not natural. Repeating patterns, like a map. Or warning. Or trap, Lila murmured low, kneeling with her analyzer. Trace elements match team logs. Xenon isotopes sky high. Power source ain't local. Elena pressed on, nodding. Quick recon, data grab, extract. The plan felt thin now, the chamber's draw coiling tight. A low hum thrummed the floor. Ahead loomed a seamless door, sealed blank. No grips, no controls, just mocking quiet. Marcus circled, scanner humming. Energy sigs alien. But if I interface? He jacked a probe into a slim seam. Sparks erupted, the door quivered, but held. Damn. Feedback's pushing back. Lila's device shrilled. Air dropping. Can't linger. Elena's jaw tightened. The team's fate weighed heavy, friends lost to blind trust in the signal. She wouldn't echo it. Back to shuttle. Need more power, better gear. This doesn't end here. Retreating, the hum swelled, a dirge of voids trailing them. Regret sighed in the wind, but Elena buried it. They'd pivot. Humans always did. The emergency lights' dim flicker painted specters across the control room's bulkheads, shadows writhing long. Elara swiped sweat from her brow, grime streaking her skin. She eyed Jax, hunched over the stuttering console, his lean form rigid as he shunted power from extras. Air recyclers wheezed against smoke haze leaking from a burst conduit. Any luck? She asked, voice even against her guts twist. The chamber's core faltered, threatening the outpost's tenuous balance. They'd ventured too deep into uncharted crust, chasing lost colony whispers, rousing something ancient and wrathful. Jax shook his head, eyes glued to red blinking readouts, hands blurring on keys. Seismic dampeners toast. Another shake like last, and this sector pancakes. Manual seal on the breach, UX hatch now. Mira hovered by the door, scanner gripped tight as a charm. She'd warned against deeper ruins from the jump, spotting scan flaws in the geology. Now regret choked the dust-thick air. Signal the ship. Retreat. Ghosts aren't worth our graves. Elara's gaze sharpened, resolve stealing her face. Ship's a day out, comms jammed by interference. We're solo. She shouldered the toolkit, metal thudding her leg. Remote core stabilization had blown up, sparking microfractures webbing the floor. Jax rose, hands smearing his jumpsuit. She's right. Manual it. But corridors gassy, vents hissing warnings. He nodded to the foggy passage, low sizzle beckoning. They advanced tight, Elara probing ahead with an improv tool. Each step jarred up her legs, rock moaning below. Myra's scanner jittered, mapping shifting layers that could engulf them. Left flank's hot, she whispered, humor muted by dread. Big one's brewing there. Midway floor warped. Jax lurched, clutching Elara's arm. She yanked him on, straining as a rift tore behind, ceiling chunks cascading. They dove to an alcove, dust veiling a new chasm spewing fumes. Adapt or die, Jax coughed, grin brief but true. He fished cabling and sealant from his pack. Bridget, you and Mira anchor, I'll span. Elara secured harnesses as Mira pinpointed weaknesses. Gas thickened, stinging eyes, but rhythm bound them, grit threading mayhem. Jax inched the shaky line, Ruin's hush pressing expectant. It tautened as he hit hatch controls, but sparks bit back system's last spite. Elara's heart hammered. Slip here, and lives plus mission hopes dissolved to nothing. Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle bucked through nebula haze, engines keening against the derelict station's tug. Marco, harnessed beside, teased his diagnostic pad, fingers coaxing like a stubborn companion. See that? Core's humming soft. Whatever ran this didn't die, it hushed deliberate. Lila glanced back from co-pilot, voice edged. Or sabotage. Advanced team's silence had cause. Blind Doc invites their end. She tuned scanners, fragments flashing, void halls, locked walls, central chamber throbbing like a pulse. Docking clamps thudded home, shuttering the hull. Elena freed first, boots planting firm. Plan holds. Marco, breach outer ring with me. Lila, monitor, ping every 5. No solos, if off we bail. Command's heft rang true from cargo hall scars, but soured today. The team, 3 solid, Rhea's her old ally, vanished in this husk 2 days prior, last words mangled, echoes that remember. Airlock hissed to red-lit corridor, dust swirling stale. Marco probed with multi-tool beams slashing rust. Tomb vibes, he echoed off walls. Tripped old security? Or AI got visitor-phobic? Elena s'achut des bulkhead devant twisting symbol. Eyes front. Answers not tails. She keyed team codes. Door ground open, exhaling cold metal tang. Outer ring held ghost holos, decayed streams flickering. Marco jacked his pad at a console. Jackpot. Reached chamber but snagged on resonance lock. Needed harmonic key. Visor hid his spark with piercing dark. Our puzzle love, aliens built it to cull the rushed. Rumble shook, lights gasping like breath. Lila crackled, energy spike. Out, now. Elena dragged Marco as decks split, cryo mist surging from rift, icing lines. They fled, sliding on frost, chill-piercing seals like blame. Plan B. Elena sealed the breach manual, door clamping as mist clawed, claiming Marco's tool to depths. He cursed, scraping ice. Now spit and prayer improv. Lila's feed steadied the shuttle, tone wary. Not random. Stations feeding core power. Deeper and ring drops. Elena eyed the frosted inner door, symbols writhing in blinks. Beyond, chamber loomed silent, vast, knowing they shorted an engineer regretting zilch. We adapt, she murmured. Reyes pushed, we do. Marco richt probe, waiting coil, imite scrap. Captain Grit, let's tune this beast. Hum rose challenging, station quaked expectant, daring harmony or hush. Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle lurched, engines whining into the debris field's grip. Sparks arced the panel, she glanced at Marcus, buried in wiring, grease-smeared face nodded but eyes defiant. Got it? He grunted, ripping a cable. Whine eased to hum, shuttle nose through outpost wreckage, metal glinting star-sharp, mute to the ambush scatter. Lila crackled from aft, oxy at 60%. Dock soon or field's lunch. Elena nodded unseen. The chamber, old docking bay, had sealed post-breach, its vacuum gear barring return. No lights, no welcome, just void stare. She quashed it, tracing scanner pings. Rival salvagers lurked, black phantoms stripping human frontier bones. Closing, she said, get tight but voice sure. Scanner marked 3 sleek predators, not honest haulers but colony gutters leaving regrets husk. Marcus snorted, hands clean on jumpsuit. Closing? Bobby me. AUX thrusters, I'll rethink their choices. He patched power smooth, galaxy scrap wizard. Elena valued his scrap to save your alchemy. But it wouldn't stretch time. First jolt hammered, a mind blooming silent. Shuttle whirled, alarms wailing, harnesses biting. Teeth gritted, Elena fought controls, jets firing steady. Lila status. Aft storage breach, lost 2 fuel cans. Emergencies only. Clipped caution laced fear. No room for more. Chamber's void symbolized isolation. Earth tales of spirit rang hollow here. Mere thread. Marcus barked, laughter slicing tension. Fuel? Momentum's king. Elena, my mark, port burn full. Trust absolute. His schemes misfired, never folded. Lead salvager loomed, ports glowing. Mark. Throttle slammed, shuttle twisted, slingshotting debris. Beam missed void wide. Cheers ragged over comms, seconds bought, not one. Debris parted to scarred hull, tears from attack venting air and souls. Elena recalled crew's clipped ends. Regret knifed, unsilenceable. But shoved aside. Survive first. Docking clamp. Locks grabbed, shuddering, seal warning flaring, hiss slow. Marcus unbuckled, toolkit ready. I'll patch. Scout ahead, you two. They follow, stations their tomb. Lila stepped up, pale under flickers, scanner shield-like. Core residuals, AUX online possible. Her wariness balanced Marcus's fire, Elena's steel. Together, star-pushing grit. Airlocks cycled to grated clang, chamber shadows tuned deep, consoles wrecked. Beams caught dust veils of lost dreams. Elena led, rifle primed. Salvagers wouldn't pause, breaches loomed for deep tech. Clang distant, steps? She halted, signal, pulse racing. Marcus visored, grin, showtime. Lila's scanner hand shook. Stake soared, misstep and Chambers' scorn took all. They advanced, absence's weight forging steps, regret to steal. Ilara's fingers shook, prying the panel, AUX generators hum, buzzing gloves. Chamber recyclers died hours back, stale bite clawing throat, but ignored. Helmet glow lit, snaking wires, sparking from overload scars like raw nerves. This it, she breathed, steady against suit sweat. Jax's pre-breach trust, scrawled schematics on cracked pad, wouldn't fray like these lines. Kale crouched near, bulk shadowing bulkhead. Team muscle, debris hauler sans gripe, but eyes flicked, sealed door constant. Hurry, Ilara. Hull holds but tremors. He gripped toolkit shield-like. Asteroid core rumbled now, outpost grown deep. Rival Vexery sabotage stabilizers for crystal veins, stranding them, oxy dwindling. She nodded, clipping bypass. First try flooded feedback, nearly toasting comms. Now, core bare, she manual rerouted, intuition trumping alien guides. No sleek code, just grit, probe from scraps. Spark singed glove, hum evened. Overheads blazed white. Got it. Panel sealed, exhale sharp. Recycler's word, freshness chasing must. Kale shouldered clap, grin cracking caution. Door hissed to corridor, console wailed, integrity 42%. Vexery drills nod far side, vibes ramping. Mirror paced control, wood exhaustion dulled, data pad plotting vectors. Hero time finally. Scans, Vexery queen docking. They'll gut this rock, us debris. Banter sharp, eyes loss heavy. Jax gone, skirmish vented, hollow in choices. Ilara straightened, faceplate grime wiped. Adapt. Sector 7 crystals, leverage. Rig charges, collapse vein on them, signal relay time. Not vengeance, survival twist, hazard to hunter. Kale pack tools clinking. Risky. Wrong shake buried. But stepped in sync, bond unspoken pulling. Outpost quaked, ceiling dust regret fine. Revived chamber behind mock Jax's unfilled quiet. They pushed, resolves hum threading dark. Corridors ahead. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control room, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts over the scattered debris. Captain Ilara gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the cold metal as she stared at the readout. The air recyclers were failing faster than projected. Another hour, maybe two, before the oxygen levels dipped into the red. She'd sent Jax and Mira into the lower decks to jury-rig a bypass, but the comms had gone silent 10 minutes ago. No crackle of response, just static mocking her from the speakers. Damn it, she muttered, slamming a fist down. The impact echoed in the empty chamber, a hollow reminder of how few they were now. Just the three of them left after the crash, the rest of the crew scattered across the alien moon like broken promises. Ilara wasn't one for regrets, she'd clawed her way to command through grit and quick thinking. But this place clawed back. The chamber, with its vaulted ceilings mimicking some ancient human cathedral, seemed to amplify the silence, as if it knew their absence from the stars and reveled in it. A low rumble vibrated through the floor, pulling her from the thought. The habitat's outer hull, stressed by the moon's relentless dust storms, groaned under the pressure. She checked the schematics again, tracing the lines with her finger. The backup filters were in the engineering bay, buried under collapsed bulkheads from the impact. Jax, the wiry engineer with his endless stream of half-cocked ideas, had insisted they could MacGyver something from the salvage. Mira, the cautious xenobiologist, had argued for caution, mapping the storm patterns first. Ilara had sided with action. Waiting meant suffocation. The comms hissed to life, startling her. "Cap, it's bad down here." Jax's voice, strained but laced with that defiant wit. Bulkheads pinned Myra's leg. Can't move her without tools, and the recyclers leaking like a sieve. Ilara's heart thudded. "Hold tight. I'm coming. Seal the hatch behind me, don't let the Atmo escape." She grabbed the toolkit, slinging it over her shoulder, and bolted for the access ladder. The rungs were slick with condensation, the air already tasting thinner, sharper. Descending into the lower decks felt like plunging into a grave. The lights here were sporadic, illuminating twisted metal and flickering panels. The storm outside battered the hull in waves, a rhythmic assault that made the walls flex like breathing lungs. Reaching the engineering bay, she found them huddled against a sparking conduit. Mira lay propped on a crate, her face pale, leg bound with makeshift splints from wiring and fabric. Jax knelt beside her, sweat beading on his brow as he worked a plasma torch on the debris. "Ilara," Mira breathed, relief flickering in her eyes. She was the steady one, always weighing risks like a scale, but pain etched lines around her mouth. "The filters are intact, but the line's ruptured. If we don't patch it soon, save it," Ilara cut in, dropping to her knees. She assessed the damage. A jagged tear in the conduit, venting precious air into the void. The chamber's design, meant to inspire awe in zero-G colonies, now trapped them in its irony, grand but fragile, echoing their isolation. "Jax, talk me through it." He nodded, his hands steady despite the tremor in his voice. "We repurposed the auxiliary coolant line. Siphoned from the storm shields, they're overbuilt for this dust. But it'll drain the outer defenses. One big gust and we're exposed." Mira shifted, wincing. "It's a gamble. The storm's peaking. But no choice." Ilara met their gazes, the weight of command settling like dust on her shoulders. They'd come to this moon for first contact, chasing signals that turned out to be echoes of a long-dead civilization. Now, survival was the only signal that mattered. She unspooled the toolkit, her fingers moving with practiced speed. "Then we make it work. Jax, reroute the flow. Mira, guide me on the seals, your eyes are sharper." As they worked, the hull shuddered violently, a section buckling with a screech that reverberated through the chamber. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The storm had found a weak point, prying at the seams. Ilara sealed the patch just as a hiss escaped, her gloved hand pressing the alloy into place. Air stabilized, but barely, the readings climbed back to yellow. Myra's voice was faint. "We can't stay here. The chamber, it's failing. Like it was built to outlast us, but it won't." Jax wiped his brow, forcing a grin. "Humans first, though. Always." Ilara helped Mira to her feet, the three of them leaning on each other as they limped back toward the upper decks. The regret lingered, a quiet anthem in the air, lost crew, shattered mission, but it fueled them. The storm howled on, but inside, their breaths synced, defiant against the void. One step at a time they'd rewrite the echo. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the control room, turning the scattered debris into jagged silhouettes that clawed at the walls. Ilara wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers leaving a streak of grime on her skin. She had always been the steady one, the engineer who fixed what others broke, but now her hands trembled as she jury-rigged another conduit. The air recyclers hummed unevenly, pulling in the stale scent of ozone and fear. "Keep it together," Marcus muttered from the console, his voice rough like gravel under boots. He was the pilot, bold and unyielding, the one who'd pushed them into this uncharted sector despite the warnings. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the flickering readouts. The ship's core was failing, Some alien artifact they'd salvaged from the derelict station had triggered a cascade, locking them out of the main systems. Outside, the nebulous tendrils swirled like living smoke, pressing against the hull with invisible weight. Lena paced behind them, her cautious nature fraying at the edges. She clutched the data slate, its screen cracked but still displaying fragments of the artifact's code. We should have jettisoned it back on the station. Now it's rewriting our NAV protocols. If we don't isolate the breach soon, we'll drift straight into the core. Ilara nodded, soldering the last wire with a spark that lit her face in harsh relief. Isolation's our best shot. But it'll take power we don't have. She glanced at Marcus, who was already plotting a manual override, his fingers dancing over the auxiliary controls. The plan from hours ago, to vent the artifact into space, had backfired spectacularly. The damn thing had interfaced deeper than they realized, turning their own thrusters against them. A low groan echoed through the ship, the hull protesting as the nebula's magnetic fields tugged harder. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Marcus slammed a fist on the panel. Thrust at 20%. We're losing altitude, fast. His jaw clenched, the scar on his cheek pulling tight. He'd earned that in a bar fight on Luna Prime, a reminder of his reckless streak, but here it fueled his grit. Lena stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. What if we use the artifact's own energy signature? Reverse the polarity on the interface. It's risky, could fry the whole grid, but it might give us a window to purge. Ilara paused, the soldering iron hovering. The idea was clever, born of desperation, but it carried weight. One wrong surge and they'd be ghosts in the void. Still, Marcus met her gaze, a silent agreement passing between them. Do it, he said, voice steady. Lena, feed me the quartz. Ilara, on my mark. They moved as one, a rhythm honed from years hauling cargo across the fringes. Lena's fingers flew over the slate, adapting the code on the fly, her caution giving way to precision. Ilara sealed the conduit, sparks flying like fireflies in the dimness. The ship shuddered violently, a deep vibration rattling their bones as the nebula's pull intensified. Outside the viewport, violet storms churned, beautiful and merciless. Marcus barked. Ilara flipped the switch. Energy arced through the lines, blue fire racing along the walls. The console lit up, systems rebooting in a frenzy. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then the thrusters roared back to life, shoving them clear of the gravitational maw. But victory came at a cost. The artifact's final pulse had scorched the auxiliary drives. They'd limp home weeks longer than planned, with repairs that would eat their profits. Ilara leaned back, exhaustion etching lines on her face. Marcus exhaled, clapping Lena on the shoulder. Not bad for a trio of fools. Lena managed a wry smile, but her eyes lingered on the viewport, where the nebula receded like a fading bruise. The chamber they'd left behind on the station mocked them still, empty now, its secrets half unraveled. Regret hummed in the air, a quiet anthem, but so did the spark of what they'd salvaged. Not just data, but proof that human hands could wrestle stars from the dark. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators filled the corridor like a distant heartbeat, faltering now and then as if the ship itself were gasping for air. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers leaving a streak of grime across her skin. The bulkhead before them groaned under the pressure of the hull breach 2 decks below, but it held, for now. She glanced at Marco, who was elbow-deep in a jury-rigged panel, his tools clattering against exposed wiring. Almost got it, he muttered, his voice tight but laced with that familiar edge of sarcasm. If this doesn't work, we can always invite the vacuum in for tea. Lila hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes scanning readouts that flickered erratically. Power levels are dropping faster than projected. If we don't seal the secondary conduit soon, the whole aft section goes dark. And us with it. Elena nodded, forcing steadiness into her tone. She wasn't about to let doubt creep in, not when they'd come this far. The expedition to Epsilon 7 had promised breakthroughs, ancient ruins whispering secrets of a long-lost civilization. But the planet's storms had turned their lander into scrap, stranding them on the Endeavor with failing systems and a dwindling oxygen reserve. The chamber back on the bridge, that sterile heart of command, now echoed empty without the rest of the crew, lost to the initial crash. Regret hung in the air like frost, but Elena shoved it down. Survival first. A sharp spark jumped from Marco's panel, and he yanked his hand back with a curse. Damn it. The relays are fried. We need a bypass, something to reroute the main flow without tripping the safeties. Lila stepped forward, her caution giving way to urgency. She tapped her tablet, pulling up schematics that glowed faintly in the red emergency lighting. Here, use the auxiliary coolant lines. It's risky, they weren't designed for this load. But if we throttle it manually... Elena caught the hesitation in her voice. Risky meant potential overload, a chain reaction that could vent the entire deck. But waiting meant suffocation, slow and certain. Do it, she said, her hand steady on Marco's shoulder. I'll monitor from the junction box. If it spikes, we pull the plug. Marco grinned despite the strain, his eyes meeting hers with a spark of that unbreakable camaraderie that had kept them going through the endless nights of rationing and repairs. Boss, you make blowing up sound like a group hug. He worked fast, splicing lines with practiced twists, the acrid smell of melting insulation sharpening the air. Lila fed him coordinates, her fingers flying, while Elena braced against the wall, watching the pressure gauges creep upward. The ship shuddered again, a reminder of the storm's lingering fury outside, battering the hull like an unrelenting fist. Come on, you beautiful beast, Marco whispered to the machinery as if coaxing a stubborn engine to life. The lights overhead stuttered, then steadied, a fragile glow pushing back the shadows. For a moment, hope flickered, stronger than the recycled air they breathed. But then the alarms wailed, a piercing cry that cut through the hum. Lila's tablet blared red, overload in progress. The conduit was buckling, heat building like a forge. Elena lunged for the junction, slamming the emergency cutoff just as a plume of steam hissed out, scalding her arm. She bit back a yelp, the pain sharp but secondary to the sight of the panel stabilizing, inching back from the brink. Marco slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Close. Too close. Lila's face was pale, but she met Elena's gaze with quiet resolve. It bought us time. Maybe enough to reach the auxiliary bridge. But the storm's worsening. Sensors show it's pulling debris right toward us. Elena flexed her burned arm, the sting a tangible reminder of the cost. The chamber's empty seats mocked them still, a silent chorus of what-ifs. But they moved as one, tools in hand, toward the next fight. The endeavor wasn't done yet, and neither were they. Elena gripped the rusted lever, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The chamber's walls pulsed with that faint, mocking hum, as if the ancient machinery inside laughed at their desperation. Sweat traced paths down her temple, but she didn't wipe it away. Marco crouched beside her, his toolkit splayed open like a surgeon's tray, wires and probes glinting under the emergency lights. This thing's got more tricks than a politician, he muttered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Lila hovered at the doorway, her scanner beeping erratically, eyes darting between the readouts and the shadows creeping in from the corridor. The air grew thicker, laced with the acrid tang of overheating circuits. They'd come this far, through the collapsing tunnels, past the swarm of bioluminescent pests that had claimed Raja's arm before they sealed him in cryo, only to hit this final barrier. The chamber wasn't just a power source. It was the heart of the derelict station, a relic from a long-extinct civilization that humans had stumbled upon in their desperate bid for salvage. But it demanded a key they didn't have, a harmonic sequence tied to the crew's vital signs. Raja's were gone now, flatlined in the logs, and the machine knew it. It mocked them with echoes of his voice, fragmented snippets from old comms, pleading for backup that never came. Try modulating the frequency again, Lila said, her caution cracking into urgency. She stepped closer, ignoring the warning klaxon that wailed like a distant siren. The plan had been simple at first. Interface with the core, siphon enough energy to jumpstart the ship's drive and limp home. But the first attempt had backfired spectacularly, flooding the auxiliary systems with a feedback loop that fried half their backups. Now, with oxygen recyclers failing and the hull breaches widening, failure wasn't an option. It was a death sentence, slow and suffocating. Marco nodded, splicing a jury-rigged cable into the panel. Sparks flew, illuminating his face in sharp relief, grit etched into every line, the wit that had kept them laughing through the early storms now buried under focus. Got it? Elena on 3, pull hard. This beast might buck, but we're not letting it win. She counted down silently, muscles coiling like springs. 1. The hum intensified, vibrations rattling her teeth. 2. Lila's scanner spiked, red lights flashing across its screen. 3. She yanked the lever with a grunt, the mechanism grinding in protest. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the chamber shuddered, panels sliding open with a hiss that released a burst of stale, ionized air. Energy surged through the conduits, blue arcs dancing along the walls like captive lightning. Marco whooped, fist pumping the air, but Elena's triumph soured as the echoes shifted. Raj's voice again, clearer now. Why'd you leave me? We were a team. It wasn't a recording. The chamber was adapting, pulling from their neural implants, weaving regret into its anthem. Lila froze, her face paling. It's interfacing. It's using our guilt to stabilize the core. We have to shut it down before. A low groan echoed from deep within, the floor tilting as structural supports buckled. Alarms blared anew, hull integrity dropping to critical. They had power, but at what cost? The machine wasn't just alive. It was feeding on their fractures, the unspoken blame that had simmered since they abandoned Raj to the swarm. Elena slammed her palm against the console, overriding the sequence with raw determination. Not today, she growled, fingers flying over the controls. Marco backed her up, rerouting flows with frantic precision, while Lila recalibrated the scanner to counter the psychic bleed. Sparks showered them, heat rising, but they pressed on. Humans against the void, ingenuity their only weapon. The hum faltered, Raj's echoes fading to static, but the chamber's final pulse sent a shockwave that cracked the viewport, stars winking through the fracture like accusatory eyes. As the energy stabilized, flowing into the ship's veins, Elena leaned against the wall, breath ragged. They'd bought time, maybe enough to escape, but the regret lingered, a shadow in the hum that now powered their flight. Marco clapped her shoulder, his grin weary but real. Team still whole, Cap. Let's make it count. Lila nodded, pocketing her scanner, the weight of what they'd awakened settling over them like dust from the ancient walls. The station receded in the view screen, but its anthem whispered on, a reminder that some costs echoed forever. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the chamber's walls, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the scattered debris. Elena crouched behind a toppled console, her breath steady despite the ache in her ribs from the earlier collapse. She gripped the makeshift pry bar, nothing more than a jagged piece of hull plating, and listened to the distant rumble echoing through the derelict station. The air recyclers had failed hours ago, leaving a metallic tang that clung to her throat, but she pushed it aside. Focus. That's what Marcus had always said, his voice a ghost in her mind now, urging her on even as the void outside pressed closer. Jax moved like a shadow beside her, his wiry frame coiled for action. He'd been the cautious one from the start, the engineer who double-checked every seal and weld, but caution hadn't saved the others. They're closing in, he whispered, his eyes scanning the corridor ahead where the faint scrape of boots on grated floor grew louder. The rival scavengers, those corporate remnants who'd ambushed their shuttle, weren't after salvage anymore. Not after Elena's team had rigged the core breach that flooded their ship with plasma. This was personal now, a hunt through the station's dying veins for the last humans who dared fight back. She nodded, signaling him with a quick hand gesture. The plan from the outer ring had crumbled when the bulkhead gave way, trapping Lena in the crush. Her screams still echoed in Elena's nightmares. But they couldn't stop. The beacon they'd activated in the auxiliary bay was their only shot, a desperate pulse to any friendly vessel in the sector. If the scavengers reached it first, all of it ended. Elena's fingers tightened on the bar. Brave, that's what Jax called her, but it felt more like stubborn refusal to let regret win. They darted forward in unison, Jax covering her flank with the pulse rifle scavenged from the wreckage. Its charge was low, 3 shots, maybe 4, but it hummed faintly in his hands, a reminder of human grit against the cold math of survival. The corridor narrowed, pipes hissing steam from ruptured lines, and Elena spotted the junction ahead, a tangle of exposed wiring and the faint blue pulse of their beacon visible through a cracked viewport. But there, silhouetted against the stars, stood two figures, their armored suits glinting under the emergency strobes. The first shot from Jax cracked the silence, a sharp whine that sent one scavenger sprawling, his helmet shattering against the bulkhead. The second turned, firing wildly, bolts scorching the wall inches from Elena's shoulder. Heat bloomed on her skin, but she lunged, bar swinging in a wide arc that caught the man's knee with a sickening crunch. He crumpled, cursing in some off-world dialect, but Jax was already there, finishing it with a precise burst. They didn't celebrate, no time. Blood, real human blood, smeared the floor, a stark reminder that these weren't monsters, just desperate souls like them, twisted by the endless resource wars. Elena reached the beacon console, her fingers flying over the keys. The interface was fried, half the panel sparking, but she bypassed it with a jury-rigged shunt from Jax's toolkit, a trick Marcus had taught her back on the colony ship. "It's holding," she said, voice tight. The signal strengthened, a steady throb against the station's groaning frame. But as the readout stabilized, a new alarm blared, structural integrity failing in the core. The chamber they'd sealed earlier was buckling, and with it, the path to the escape pods. Jax pulled her back, eyes wide. "We can't stay. The whole section's coming down." Outside, through the viewport, the first hints of dawn light from the system's gas giant painted the debris field in ethereal hues, mocking their isolation. Regret tugged at her, Lena's face, Marcus's unburied form, but Elena shoved it down. They'd adapt or die trying. Together, they ran, the beacon's light fading behind them like a promise half-kept. Ilara's hands trembled as she sealed the final panel, the hiss of recompressing air echoing through the dim corridor like a sigh of relief. The chamber's lights flickered back to life, bathing the control room in a sterile glow that pushed back the shadows clinging to the walls. She glanced at Jax, his face smeared with grime and sweat, the witty glint in his eye dulled by exhaustion but not extinguished. "Told you we'd make it," he muttered, wiping his brow with a sleeve that had long since given up on cleanliness. Beside him, Dr. Lyra slumped against the console, her cautious calculations finally bearing fruit, though the cost etched lines into her face that no amount of rest could erase. The external breach had been worse than their scans predicted. A microfracture in the hull from the asteroid field's relentless barrage, widening under the strain of the ship's desperate maneuvers. Their early plan to reroute power from non-essentials had backfired spectacularly, starving the auxiliary systems and plunging half the vessel into blackout. Alarms had wailed like banshees, forcing them to improvise with scavenged conduits and sheer human stubbornness. Jax's quick thinking with the makeshift seal had bought them minutes, but it was Ilara's grit, climbing through the venting shafts while oxygen levels dipped perilously low, that had bridged the gap to the main repair node. Now, as the atmospheric readout stabilized, a quiet tension lingered. The chamber, once a humming heart of the ship, stood silent in accusation, its empty expanse mocking the absence of the crew members they'd lost in the chaos. Two technicians, gone in the initial rupture, their voices still echoing in hurried comms that cut off too soon. Regret hung heavy, not as a weight to crush them, but as an anthem they carried forward, a reminder of choices made in the dark, of risks that saved the rest. Ilara straightened, her brave resolve hardening like the alloy she'd just welded. "We adapt or we don't survive," she said, not to preach but to affirm what they all felt. Jax nodded, clapping a hand on Lyra's shoulder, drawing her into the circle of their makeshift family. The ship groaned once more, settling into a steadier rhythm, but the stars outside the viewport remained indifferent, a vast frontier that demanded more than they'd already given. They moved as one toward the bridge, the corridor lights steady now, illuminating scuff marks and hasty repairs that told their story in scars. No victory fanfare awaited, just the hum of life support and the unspoken pact to honor the absent by pressing on. In the quiet, camaraderie wove tighter, human ingenuity their unyielding shield against the void. The chamber's echo faded behind them, but the anthem of regret fueled their steps, a gritty melody for the journey ahead.